Hi, and welcome back to our Holy Week video series. We're following Jesus' last week before Easter as it's documented in the Gospel of Mark. Now, just to catch you up, if you haven't watched the previous days, Jesus and his disciples are in Jerusalem to celebrate the Feast of Passover. It's a celebration Jews still practice today, where they remember and celebrate when God brought them freedom from slavery in Egypt. And you can read more about that in Exodus 12. So the entire week, Jesus and his disciples have been in the temple, and Jesus has been teaching and rubbing folks the wrong way. And yesterday, Wednesday, while they're staying in Bethany, a nearby town, Judas, one of the disciples, decides that he's going to hand over Jesus to the chief priests and scribes who have been plotting to kill him. Today, it's now called Maundy Thursday, where we remember what happened that Thursday in Jerusalem. It's a day for preparing for Passover, which starts at sundown, the mark of a new day. And so Jesus sends some of the disciples ahead of them to Jerusalem to find a spot for the Passover meal and to prepare until the evening. We'll pick it up at verse 17, and here's what it says. When evening came, Jesus arrived with the 12. While they were reclining at the table eating, he said, "Truly I tell you, one of you will betray me, one who is eating with me." And they were all saddened, and one by one they said to him, "Surely you don't mean me." "It is the one of the 12, he replied, "one who dips bread into the bowl with me. The Son of Man will go just as it is written about him. But woe to that man who betrays the Son of Man. It would be better if he had never been born." And while they were eating, Jesus took bread, and when he'd given thanks, he broke it and gave it to his disciples, saying, "Take it, this is my body." And then he took a cup, and when he'd given thanks, he gave it to them, and they all drank from it. "This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many," he said to them. "Truly I tell you, I will not drink again from the fruit of the vine until the day when I drink it new in the kingdom of God." So this meal, this Thursday, kicking off Passover, the Seder, comes to be known as the Last Supper. Now, this Seder meal had a lot of tradition around it, and it was a very holy practice, and it still is. And so everything associated with the meal meant something significant. Now, we see Jesus and his disciples are reclining next to the table while eating, and this was to symbolize their freedom. See, in ancient times, only freed people had the luxury of reclining while they ate a meal, and so Jewish people reclined to remind them of their freedom. And there would have been 3 loaves of unleavened bread, or matzah, used in the meal, unleavened so it could be prepared rapidly. There were also 4 cups of wine that would have been used to signify each of the promises from God to the Jewish people in Exodus chapter 6, verses 6 through 8, that God would take Israel out of Egypt. He'd rescue them, he'd redeem them, and he'd bring them into their new home, the Promised Land. And there are a lot of theories about the Last Supper and when these events happen, but my favorite is that Jesus takes the middle of the 3 loaves, as was the custom, and he breaks the bread, and he says to them, "This is my body," and it being the middle matzah signifies Jesus' eventual death tomorrow between 2 thieves. Now, when Jesus takes the cup of wine, he would have taken the 3rd cup for the blessings after the meal, the cup of God's promise to redeem Israel. And Jesus then interrupts this regular Jewish tradition and remembering and said that this wine is the blood of the covenant. And some manuscripts even say the new covenant or the new promise, which is poured out for many. This is the blood that would not only redeem Israel or Jewish people, but the rest of the world. And this meal, in this moment, is now what Christians remember through the sacrament of communion. Other Gospels say that Jesus tells his disciples that whenever they drink from that cup and eat of that bread for Passover, to do it remembering him. Paul later goes on to say that as we continue to celebrate communion, we proclaim Jesus' death till he comes again. So in this moment, Jesus interrupts a ritual, and a meaningful one at that, and creates a new tradition leading to a sacrifice. And then Jesus and his disciples finish their celebration of the Passover meal, and they head to the opposite side of Jerusalem and across a small valley called Kidron to Gethsemane to pray. There's a garden there. And Jesus had been predicting his eventual betrayal and death now many times this week. But while they're on the way, Jesus quotes Zechariah 13:7, saying that the shepherd will be struck down and the sheep scattered. Peter speaks up. He always seems to speak before he thinks, and he says, "I'll never run away." And we can almost see Jesus rolling his eyes at this point as he tells Peter that he knows that Peter will disown him 3 times before dawn, before the rooster crows twice. So the group arrives at Gethsemane to pray, and Jesus asked his disciples to stay awake with him, to stay watchful and pray with him. It's now probably around midnight, and the disciples are obviously exhausted, and they fall asleep. And we see Jesus stepping just a little further away from his friends, and we hear some of his distressed prayers. And it's in Jesus' distress and his honest prayer, and the disciples must have heard, we get to hear the most dangerous prayer that anyone can make. In verse 36, he prays, "Abba, Father, everything is possible for you. So take this cup from me, this cup of suffering, of death." But here's the dangerous part, "But not what I will, but what you will." Even with the distress of knowing his betrayal is coming and his death is coming, he sets an example for all of us to pray, saying, "Not my will, but yours. Not what I want, but what you want." Now, Gethsemane must have been one of their favorite spots, because the next thing we see is Judas arriving with a crowd armed with swords and clubs, sent by the chief priests and teachers of the law. And Judas now plays his hand, and he kisses Jesus as a sign to the guards, and Jesus is taken away. And some of the disciples try to fight back, but Jesus goes peacefully, and Mark says that then everyone deserted him and fled. He even says that a young man wearing nothing but a linen garment was following Jesus, and when they seized him, the young man fled naked, leaving his garment behind. Just as the prophet Zechariah said, and just as Jesus reminded them, Jesus is arrested and all of his followers run. Jesus is then taken into custody, and overnight and tomorrow he is tried illegally by Jewish law, by the Jewish court. See, it was illegal to try someone overnight. But we'll pick up the story tomorrow with the first of his 6 overnight and early morning trials. So thanks so much for taking a portion of your day to be with us. It means a lot to us. We hope you're having a great Holy Week and you have a great Maundy Thursday. Please join us tomorrow, and we'll walk through Jesus' last day, what we call Good Friday. And as always, if you're in the Birmingham area and you don't have a home church, I'd love to have you here as our guest at Hueytown First Methodist. We're launching a new series called Bounce Back, and we'd love to have you join us. We have a traditional service starting at 10 a.m., and our new Thrive Modern Worship service is at 11 every single week. And for more information about our church and what to expect, check us out at hueytownfirst.com, or we're on Facebook at Hueytown First UMC and Instagram at Hueytown UMC. I hope you have a great day, and we'll see you again tomorrow.